Hello there, and welcome along to Season 3 and Episode 14 of the Gardener Ben podcast, which is brought to you in association with Peter Beals Roses, winner of 30 Chelsea gold medals and creating timeless roses since 1968. Go online and shop at www.peterbealsroses.com. Let's start today's episode by all celebrating the fact that we're already halfway through the month of January. January seems to drag, with the weather being very changeable. And here on the south coast of England, on the outskirts of the New Forest, it has been very changeable to say the least. We've had blisteringly cold frosts, followed by days and days of driving rain. However, I've made the most of my time wherever possible, and I have started the mammoth task of potting up all of this year's roses that will be reviewed during 2026. I'm about halfway through the task. And as many of you may have joined me on live streaming events or seen me do online, I've been potting this year's bare root roses up into containers and pots. I've been doing this for a very good reason. The area surrounding the greenhouse here at North Lodge, which is often referred to by myself as the trial garden, has had roses planted in it for 2 or 3 seasons in a row now. Now, much as I'm really nourishing the soil and adding my soil improver to a depth of around 4 inches every single year, it is unfair for these varieties to be placed into what is now classed to be tired soil. It's important for each of these varieties to have exactly the same start, and I'm not saying that these are being grown under clinical trial circumstances, but I do like to try and control and give everybody as even keel as possible. So they're all being placed into a 9-litre pot and a mixture of 75% John Innings No. 3, which is a loam-based compost, mixed with 25% soil conditioner, a little sprinkling of bud, fish and bone meal, and of course the very important mycorrhizal fungi. Each rose will be potted up into exactly the same size container and offered exactly the same growing start to hopefully even the playing field and make sure they all have the opportunity to shine as they should do. This also means that when it comes to my personal review process, it is far easier for me to film with a rose that's grown in a pot than it is, for instance, a rose grown in the ground. It is very, very difficult for me to harvest media from a rose grown in the ground and manage to get enough space around it to allow me to film with alongside it as well. So when the rose is in a container, I can move it to a different location in the garden and control the natural light levels, making sure that it shows just as best as possible as it can during the filming process. So I've decided to keep all of 2026's roses in containers and pots so I can move them about and shuffle them as necessary. If you've been following along online, you'll also notice that I've started the very first of 2026's rose pruning tutorials. We kicked it off with starting to prune our climbing and rambling roses, and I produced content on that just this week, before moving on to standard and tree roses. If you need any help whatsoever on the subject of pruning, make sure that you do head over to my YouTube channel now, where I use the same username, _GardenerBen, and make sure that you access the full back catalogue of videos that have been produced in the past. There's plenty of time to get out and do this task, so please don't feel by any means that you need to start rushing out and getting this done. Rose pruning normally takes place anywhere from the second week of January all the way through to the very end of March, depending on your growing zone. You'll often hear me say that it's best if you're unsure to do this task a little bit on the later side and turning up a little bit late to the party, especially if you're on a little bit of the unexperienced side. You're better off pruning your roses towards the end of February or the beginning of March than you are doing them too early and having them caught out by a late frosts and causing yourself some dieback. So please don't feel any pressure whatsoever from myself to rush out and get this task done. The weather is still incredibly changeable and there's loads of time to get it done. In the meantime, if you're wanting to brush up on your technique, make sure that you head across to my YouTube channel and watch all of the videos that are available to you now. Now, on to this week's guest. I wanted to make sure that this particular episode was scheduled at a particular time. And for those of you following along on social media, you'll know that at this time last year, I was really struggling with my mental health. I was incredibly depressed and struggling on many, many different fronts. And although I was going through therapy, it was important to my husband that I did as many things as at all possible to make myself feel better. I'd found myself lost, bogged down, and more importantly, unable to hear the voice in my head, which through the last 40 years of my life had always been strong, true and directional. I always knew exactly what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, and how I could do it. This voice had all but disappeared within the noise, and I was questioning every single step. I didn't really know which way to turn, and nothing felt real. Now, for those of you that have experienced depression, anxiety, or mental health problems before, this can really be very, very unnerving. I found myself in a very, very dark place and simply didn't know what to do, and was prepared to try absolutely anything to find myself, ground myself, and become more present in my day-to-day life, as I'd become so disconnected from so many different situations as a way of coping with what was going on in my head. I went across to Nicola and had my first Reiki session, and to say that I enjoyed the experience is an understatement. I lay on Nicola's couch after having very little conversation about what I was looking to achieve. She worked her way around my body, one hand burning hot and the other one icy cold, as she worked her way around my pressure points. And it was a very, very moving experience indeed. In fact, even sat here talking to you now about the experience, I'm starting to well up a little bit. Being given the permission to let things go was very, very moving indeed. And I'm not afraid to say in a public space that I cried and cried like a baby, releasing a huge amount of negative energy, pent up stress, and simply just being allowed to let things go. Even if you don't believe in the transfer of energy or the practice of Reiki, I would strongly advise everybody to have a go at this particular type of holistic therapy if they can. Being placed somewhere warm, comfortable, safe and nurturing for an hour, and just being the focus of somebody else's attention for an hour, and allowing yourself to let things go, focusing on your breathing and just being present, away from a device and away from other items of stimulation, for me was really, really moving. At the end of our session, Nicola allowed me to recover and gave me a few minutes to myself before sitting me back up. She explained to me that she could feel the weight that had been bearing down on my shoulders, my hips, and ultimately into my knees. I also explained back to her that I felt her wash an awful lot of this away and felt much, much lighter, that I had a tingling in my hands throughout the experience that I felt like I needed to shake off. When asked, Nicola sees me surrounded by roses, but didn't know why. And now she knows me a little bit better. She has no doubt in her mind about why I'm always surrounded by roses in her visions. So during the month of January, which is often incredibly dark, depressing, and causes so many of us so much anxiety, I wanted to bring you this conversation with Nicola from Soulful Wisdom Academy as a way of inspiring you to be a little bit more mindful, kinder to yourself, and to reach out for help if you need it. So I really hope that you enjoy the conversation that follows as we learn a little bit more about Nicola and what it is that she does. Well, today on the Gardener Ben podcast, as I said at the beginning of this season, I was going to start to have a lot of more conversations which were interesting to myself. And I'm joined by Nicola today. Nicola, online, you're calling yourself Soulful Wisdom Academy, and you're a Reiki practitioner and a shamanic dragon priestess. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Can you? Now, this is really something that really interests me. Now, I've joined you for holistic therapies. You've practiced Reiki on me several times, which I've found to be really beneficial and brought massive relief to my life. The shamanic dragon priestess, could you explain that for me? Because I've been too shy to ask you in the past. So could you explain that a little bit for me?
Yeah, so that's like almost like 3 lineages. So I'm also a shamanic healing practitioner.
Yeah.
So that is one piece of it, which is really working with the elements, earth, fire, water, air. And it's also sort of working with nature, plants, animals as our guardians, plant allies. They're our teachers. So it's looking to nature as our teachers. We then have the dragon. The dragon is the guardian, I guess, of the life force that comes from the earth. Yeah. The life force energy that flows through us, our chakras, our energies, centers, and they're also the guardians of the elemental kingdom and the cosmos. So that's how the sort of dragon comes into it. And we know about dragon stories that are throughout the world. you can go to any town and you will find a dragon story somewhere. So that's ancient and it's worldwide. So the dragon is also a representation, I feel, of the divine feminine as well, sort of taking it right back to the beginning of time. Then we have the priestess, which is, she holds sacred space, she holds ceremony, safe sacred space, she might hold circles, and that's also what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of put them together because the dragon is my main, my main guides that come through to me. So I have various dragon guides. So that is who I am. So I kind of termed it together.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a term that's out there. It's just what I've created.
Okay. Yeah.
As to who I identify with at the moment. If we have to have a label. So
Okay.
I'm not one for labels, so it's just sort of a marketing thing, I suppose, that you have to have a label. So that's the label I gave myself.
Okay.
So it's those sort of three kind of lineages placed together because it's the work that I do.
Okay, brilliant. Now, I first made contact with you, actually, it's about nearly a year ago. Obviously, the listeners will know that I found myself in a particularly dark place around a year ago. I was really struggling with lots of issues regarding my mental health and how I could process a lot of things that had happened to me over a period of 45 years. And Mark, my husband, reached out to you and thought it would be really, really good for me to have some Reiki as a form of healing. That's how I came to you. How did you start all of this? How did you find your gifts? How did your path draw you to where you are now? And it's quite a large question, but
it is, because it's something it's always been with me. And when I was younger, I would have these dreams. And they're prophetic dreams, and they would come true. Mm-hmm. And usually there were disasters and horrible things.
Okay. That couldn't have been very nice for a young person.
Not really. When I was 8 and I dreamt of the whole Zeebrugge happening, when I don't know if you remember that sort of 1988 maybe, the ship, the ferry went over in half, and I actually saw all the different things that were happening.
Goodness me.
And I got up in the morning and there it was on the TV. And it did frighten me.
I'm just going to say, that must be absolutely terrifying.
It was. And I had another dream where I was, like a local house to me, a few doors up. I dreamt of it burning down. And when I woke up on the way to school, it had burnt down in the night. So
see, a lot of misplaced people would sort of point a finger at you and shout "witch," wouldn't you? That you'd sort of almost made it happen.
That is how I felt. That's what I
can imagine. Yeah.
And I was reading an Enid Blyton.
And I'm really sorry if that was traumatic for you. Then me saying that. I hope I didn't point too violently either. But
you did, then, yes. No, you got it right as a witch. Yes. I was reading a book called Enid Blyton, and it was The Mystery of the Burnt Cottage.
Yes,
and
I'm familiar with the book. Yeah,
that had burnt down.
Yeah.
And this particular cottage that burnt down a few doors up was also a thatch cottage. Oh. So I felt like, I'd read the book. Was it the book, or was it me that had created this disaster? So I guess over time I sort of shut that down, and you shut the gifts down because you don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But mainly for me, information comes through my dreams. So sometimes with clients, how to work with them, what I'm going to do, that comes through in my dreams.
Yeah. Visiting
places is how the dragon works with me. I'll be shown places, and maybe a historical event that happened on that place.
Yeah.
Like Dragon Hill, I dreamt of this whole battle that happened, and it actually happened on that an ancient battle between a red dragon and a white dragon, and it turned out to be the Saxons and the Welsh Celtics. So this sort of historical event that happened. So this is what I had all these dreams, and this is what shamanism is in a way. You're working in dream time, or you're going into a state of meditation where you work in that dream time. So that kind of made sense for me to go down that route, but it didn't really. I guess it was about 2017 that I started doing meditation.
Okay, so quite not
late.
recently, but you'd racked up a few years under your belt before you then came back to your gifts and started to re-identify with them.
Yes, always interested in.
Was there some sort of catalyst behind that, or? I mean, had you stopped dreaming, if you didn't mind me asking?
No, the dreams were always there.
Yeah.
It's just I feared it.
Okay, yeah.
I feared it. I feared the dreams. I was interested in the tarot. I'd always been interested in the tarot from about 13. You know, my dad had a dream book. He had was into astrology. So all of those things were around me when I was young. But I found the church, I guess, and I went down that route.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I just feared it even more.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was at. And then I would come backwards and forwards to like playing with the tarot, doing it quietly, not letting people know that that's what I did or who I was. It was all hidden behind doors, I guess. And part of that as well, my husband wasn't really into the tarot. He didn't like all that sort of.
Now you've mentioned this before during treatment, if you don't mind me mentioning it, that he doesn't particularly feel that he believes in a lot of the healing practices or the tarot. But then when he's suffered with sort of injuries, he's asked you to sort of make him feel better and move or take away his pain or alleviate things, and he's felt benefits of that and sort of.
He does. He just sort of goes, "Can you just do your thing?" He doesn't know what it is.
So a sceptical believer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And now he is more into it, and he's seeing the changes. As some of his friends have, had Reiki with me, and they have shifts and things as well. So he knows there's something in it now. He doesn't exactly know what.
Yeah.
And he's very supportive of me. He's built my little room.
I was just going to say, he built you a wonderful studio to work in.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
The treatment room.
So he supports me in his own way, but he's like, I just don't get it.
Again, I think that's where, I mean, I'm not saying I've struggled, but I have found a slight stigma with talking to people about the journey that I've had, and I've tried to explain it to people, because obviously I'm carrying or walking around with rocks in my pocket, which is fairly new. There's a lot of rocks about the house. I'm going to point you listening can't see, but there's large chunks of amethyst and moonstone and stuff about. We've slowly gone down that path, and when I've spoken to people, they've kind of gone that glazed over look and go, "Oh, you've gone new age." It's like, I haven't gone new age. Actually, I've actually wound the clock back. I've gone old age. I've gone back to traditional sort of methods and about trying to realign my energy and be about more positive and ground myself and actually listen to my body and listen to what it needs. So, yeah, I can understand the skepticism, but people seem to get a little... And then you say, oh, actually, no matter what you believe, I've had a positive experience from this. I feel a certain way. And then they go, well, okay, well, if that's how you feel, that's fine. If that's what you get from it. And then they sort of seem to accept it, and we move past it. So it was quite late again. Sort of you came back to it, and then from there, how do we get to this point?
Yeah, so I guess when you asked about like what was the catalyst, there was quite a few deaths that happened around me. And you do find that people that come back to this, it's often either because they're wanting to contact someone. And that's where, like, for me, mediumship opens up. I don't necessarily say I'm a medium. I don't bring that bit in. But it will happen sometimes in healings, or I'll get information that I don't quite understand that comes in. And I'm getting more confident sharing that. So I just kind of went down the path. Everything opened up. And I just was hungry for everything. I was like the seeking. So I started doing, I'd always, like you say, having crystals is something I'd always had, but now I wanted to know more about, well, how do the crystals heal? So I did crystal healing, and then the Reiki, and alongside that I started doing the shamanism. And the reason I did the shamanism, because to be honest, I'd never heard of it before. It's something that we associate with, the Americans and the indigenous people there. So it's not sort of traditionally here, but I had this dream about this shaman in Mexico, and I didn't think any more of it, but I was intrigued about shamanism, so I started looking up on YouTube, and I was going to do this journey, and I ended up not doing it because I don't know whether my guides came in or something happened, but this it's going to sound really strange, but this almost like a black sheet came down behind me, and this sort of like a brick, all I can describe it is like a brick that came and hit me on the head.
Yeah.
And it was like...
don't do that.
Yeah, I think it was a don't do that, because I wasn't...
Yeah, that was heavy or negative.
Yeah, so safety. I'd have just gone off and done a journey, and actually my fear at that time was that if I did a journey, I might not come back. I might not find my way home.
Okay.
So I obviously needed to be trained in it.
Yeah.
Because
you maybe weren't ready for that much information.
No, definitely not. And it did have a big warning sign on it saying only for experienced people in show. So, and I was like, I'll ignore that.
Right.
So this weird thing, happened. And
again, it's funny that you should say that you were enough in tune with yourself or your guides, or spirit or the universe, whatever that might be, to actually say, stop, Nicola, this is not the right decision for you. Because I think so many of us, and this is one of the things that I came to you, if you remember the conversation when I came to you back here in January, that I couldn't find my voice inside my head. I used to have a very strong personal voice. I could hear myself and my own barometer, and I could hear my own spirit, and I had a very good gut instinct, and over a period of time that had become very clouded and very blocked, and I simply couldn't find my voice anymore in many different fields. And I think a lot of us have stopped doing that, haven't we? We've actually stopped listening to our gut responses and actually listening to our own bodies and the way we respond to certain situations and certain amounts of piece of information. So it's really interesting you say actually you had that sort of black curtain or block come down and say, actually, Nicola, that's not for you right now. Because I think so many of us just sort of march on and ignore it and do things that maybe we're not ready for or we shouldn't do.
Yeah, it did hurt. It was a physical.
Oh, okay.
So I was definitely stopping. I even ran downstairs to my mum because she was living with me at the time, and I was like, I ran into her and I was about to tell her what happened, and she just suddenly looked at me and went, oh, it looks like there's a big black stone behind your, like a gravestone behind your head. Oh. So, because my mum was very in tune with this, even though she says, no, I'm not, but she was
my nan was as well. My nan was very spiritual, and one of the few things I've got of hers is a little poem book of very, very naturalistic and holistic sort of wordings, which I always connect with quite a lot. I had a lot of people see it as a negative experience, but I had the very, very lovely ability to look after my grandparents when they got very, very old. First of all, my grandfather, and then he passed, and I looked after my nan alongside my mum. We're very, very close to my nan. And I've got actually a Celtic cross on my arm, which is actually dedicated to her as a tattoo. But yeah, so it's interesting that your mum also saw those, you could see those things as well. You mentioned earlier about getting connection to land and feeling spirit from land and connection to land. Now that must be quite difficult living where we live, because here on the New Forest don't get me wrong, all land is old. It's all very much the same age, but here in the New Forest we are in a very, very old part of the world. It's very, very, a lot of it is very untouched, and a lot of things have happened here. I mean, the land has been set aside for a very, very long time, and it's not really commercially used. It's not sort of ploughed up for housing. There's not a lot of road movement. We're still very natural. So it must be quite a loud place for you to live if you're connected to that kind of thing. Do you find that?
Yes, I mean, we have got ley lines as well, very close, haven't we, that run through here.
I'm going to nod and say yes, but I didn't know, but yes.
or dragon lines
yeah.
that run through. So yeah, it is. It's noisy in my dreams, definitely, because I'll pick up information. But I've learned to shut that down now because I've had the training, so that helps.
Okay.
And the land itself is. There's a lot of healers in this area, actually.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Reiki practitioners. Maybe not so many shamanic healers, but certainly a lot of healers. Even at the school that my children went to at Hyde, there's, it's probably only 40 children there at the time that I was there. So there was maybe 20 families, and probably half of us were all Reiki trained.
Really?
But we didn't know it about each other. That's what's funny. It's quite hidden.
Yeah.
But so this area, it is. It's very. There's always something on. You can find something, either a psychic fair, or there'll be a tarot reader, or there'll be a medium. There'll be someone probably not too far from you around here, and I do think that's the land. And the thing that I was shown with the dragons, because they work through the land, through the energy lines, the dragon lines, that information that comes through in my dream time, I'm shown that we have these roots here too. So where I was saying earlier, like we associate shamanism with being far away in other lands and not here, but I was shown to go back to Celtic times of what was here, and or pagan times. But then the dragons kept showing me, go back further, just communicate and contact with the land that is around you, the nature spirits, the stories that were here. So that's sort of where I'm at now, is working very much with the land that's here, and particularly the trees, the healing that trees can give us. Yeah. And we've got the ancient woodland, if you go right into the centre, near Fritham, Boulderwood, the areas there, the big old oak trees. There's many different trees, and we can receive so much healing from the trees, and that's where our druid ancestors they worked with the trees.
It's funny and interesting you should say that, because we're often out, we try and go out into the full moon wherever possible anyway, and we try, as you've suggested, to walk on the grass barefoot. We try and ground ourselves and reconnect ourselves. We live in a comparatively quite old house to most people. The house is 327 years old. The willow tree here is not very old, but this willow tree does not like me. You can't see the willow tree, I'm pointing at it, but it's literally just out there. This willow tree is very angry with me, and I see when I'm out there and I touch that tree, the colours that produces are red, purple, black. They're really angry. With Mark, they're green, they're yellow, they're nice colours, pink, they're psychedelic, they're soft. But this willow tree doesn't like me. But this willow tree and I are in a constant battle. And I can understand why this willow tree doesn't like me, because I have to continue to knuckle it back. The insurance company's really funny about its presence, so I've had to go out and I've had a bit of a strong word with the willow tree. So I understand you don't like me, and I'm really sorry I have to cut your branches off, but I do it so you can stay here, because otherwise the insurance company would actually insist I cut you off and cut you to the floor, because it's a big tree. You won't be able to see it looming over the window there. But yeah, it's literally within about 20 centimetres too close to the house. So the insurance company are a little bit funny about it. So I have to lop it back every other year. I have to completely knuckle it back. And I get that energy from that tree. However, the two olives, the old olives that I've got, those are... See, Mark would say those trees were angry with me because they shouldn't be here. But those are my pride and my joy. And I when I touch them, the colours that come through to me again, they're green and yellow and they're blue, and they're happy colours. There's a soft energy. But they say the willow tree, not happy with me at all. Which I can understand, but... So.
I get that though. But yeah, I used to be like that, because I'm a gardener's daughter. Grew up, the outside world was. And
your husband's a landscaper as well, isn't he?
No, my brother is.
Oh, okay.
He carried on.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad still does it.
Yeah.
And my mum also, grew plants and sold them.
Yeah.
So I used to grow herbs, and sell them in my early 20s, and I guess that's what got me into this, more so through the plants and the healing that herbs do. I used to run workshops for local colleges on herbs as well. So that and I'm sort of coming back full circle back to the plants again. But yeah, I mean, the tree is good. The willow we associate with grief. It can help us with healing in grief, and yeah, I remember I was saying, remembering back as a child, when my dad used to lop off the branches. And I used to get really upset about it, because to me it was like their limbs. It would be like someone coming along and cutting off your arm.
It's quite brutal, isn't it?
Really sad.
Yeah.
And so I started talking to the trees, and I think I have a people can kind of do this, and you can ask them to just draw back their energy if you give them a moment and time before you cut them. So go out and say, well, I'm going to cut your limbs next week or whatever.
All right. So
and it gives it time to draw its energy from that
I will bear that in mind, because I often sneak up on the willow tree when it's probably least expecting it. It's probably, well, it's always in winter slumber. It's sort of dropped its leaves and it's sound asleep. And I normally have to cut the willow back when Mark is out the house. Now, this sounds really funny. Everybody said, well, why are you doing that when Mark's out the house? Because the willow's very tall. It requires a 2.5 stage ladder, so it's very high, and a chainsaw. And Mark is not very helpful when it comes to being up the chainsaw. He's supposed to be on the bottom of the ladder, and then he won't be at the bottom of the ladder. He'll be somewhere else, and I'll be lopping a branch, and it nearly hits him, and he's just not very aware. So I am always better when I'm on my own, where I know where I am, and if I end up on the floor, that's up to me. So I'll make sure I talk to the willow tree in the future before I get the chainsaw out. Maybe give it, I don't know, couple of hours warning before I attack it. But it's normally, I've got a window of time, Mark's out the house for a couple of hours, I'll get on and get that done. Anyway.
That explains why it's angry with you.
I just now explaining it to you now, I think I can understand that. Yeah, it's funny, you mentioned as we were talking a second ago about places in the forest. Are there any specific favourites of yours to visit? For instance, if you need to ground or reconnect, or if there's a message that you're struggling to process.
I think one of my favourites is probably, I almost don't want to tell people where the favourite places are. They're like sacred places, aren't they? Lots of people. No, I think I do like the area
all 17 people that are listening turn up.
Frogham, Hyde, Frogham, walking through some of around the ring of trees, actually.
Okay.
There's a ring there. I've forgotten what it's called now, but I like to walk that way. Ogden's. That's probably some of my favourite areas. Nice. Yeah.
And you recently, I was very jealous. I recently saw you at Stonehenge for the winter solstice. How was that? It's an experience we've been meaning to do for a long time, but never seem to ever get round to doing. What was that like, being at the Stones for sunrise?
Yeah, no, that's lovely. It was probably about my third time that I did it. And actually this time was really special because, so I had a friend who asked me, said, are you coming? And I was like, I'm not really feeling it. Another friend asked me, said, are you coming to doing the thing? I'm like, no, I'm not feeling it. And then I got asked a third time and I was like, right, I need to be there, I better go. Take that as a sign.
Yeah.
So, and I was meant to be having the day with my dad and my stepmom, so... and I just said to him, look, do you fancy coming to Stonehenge? And he was like, yeah, all right then. He's 83. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, let's go. So I got up in the middle of the night, picked him up at 3:00, and we were actually there, the first ones there. We had tea in the back, so we had tea and cake and stuff before we started. Very nice. And then we walked on in, and it's a lovely experience, seeing the sunrise through the stones. Mm-hmm. There's nothing better than that. And it's seen all worldwide, isn't it? And the energy there it's very strong. It feels very sometimes I feel like there's quite a heavy energy. To me it feels very much more of a masculine energy as well. And so afterwards we went on to Avebury. Actually we went straight to Avebury, because that to me has the moon. So anything that's solar energy is seen as masculine energy, and anything that's lunar is feminine energy. Yes. So the alignment of Stonehenge is obviously to pick up that sunrise and that solar energy, so it has that masculine feel to it. And then when you go to Avebury, it's all in alignment with the lunar energy. It's meant to be visited at night, perhaps as well, with the moonlight on the stones, and it creates these shadows and shadings and things. So that you'd go and visit that in the lunar energies. Yeah. So I had to go and balance myself. So we went off to Avebury straight away. Oh, lovely. My dad loved it. He was like hugging the stones, and it was nice to sort of bring him a bit, because I think that's into my world.
I think that's one of the not the upsetting things, but I understand why you can't. But not being able to get actually up close to the stones now and actually physically walk between them and touch them. I mean, I understand that the site needs to be protected, because you look at the size of the stones, you look at how long they've been there, and how. Well, it's just mind-boggling, isn't it? The settlements were there for a very, very long period of time. They obviously kept a huge amount of written and song records in settlement before we could write and before we could carve and before we could physically record things. I mean, those things would pass down through story and song. To be able to orientate those stones, I mean, you stand and you read the bits of information that English Heritage have put to them. You think, I just don't understand how this is possible. So it really is a shame that you can't, apart from 2 days a year, get up close to the stones and walk through them. But living this close to it is really lovely. We had some friends down from Scotland this year, and we took them, and they had the most magical time there. And then we took them on to Salisbury. But it's really interesting to hear that you say that the site feels very masculine to you, and then you had to go and rebalance your feminine energy. Because I think if we can talk about me and my experience with healing with yourself, that was something that I was really struggling with, wasn't it? I think I remember you saying after the first session, during which I've talked about quite substantially, that I cried like a baby. I mean, you can vouch for that. And people asked me what that was like, and I said being put into a situation or given the permission by somebody to actually feel and let go of an awful lot of things that you weren't aware that you were carrying, for me was incredibly moving. The removal of so much negative energy that I felt during my experience with you, and then the washing as you wafted energy back through me was really moving for me. And you mentioned during that session that actually you were feeling a lot of blockages on my feminine side, and I think that as a man, that's probably something that we probably do block up. I mean, it was just really interesting to hear about you mentioning about different spaces feeling feminine and masculine to you, because Mark is always drawn to more moon things and the more lunar cycle, and I'm normally drawn to the sun, being, I suppose, but identifying as a lot more masculine. So it's quite interesting. But when you're actually practicing and actually healing with somebody, one of the things that Mark brought up and a question that he wanted to ask was, how as a healer do you manage to deal with all of that energy, and how do you end up not taking on energy that may not be good for you or may not be meant for you?
Yes.
Do you understand what I'm trying to...
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Because I can remember I came to you riddled with negativity and burden and grief, and you said, oh, Ben, there's so much you were carrying... I'm touching my shoulders, by the way, I'm acting this out, very much like my late granddad. But yeah, you said you were carrying so much negativity and grief on your shoulders, and that was bearing down on my hips, and you could feel that in my knees. How do you, as someone that's dealing with that kind of energy, how do you wash that away? How do you not end up absorbing that into yourself? Because otherwise I can imagine you could very quickly get quite laid down with a lot of this stuff that you didn't want.
Yes. Actually, my mum used to say that to me. She used to say, oh, well, how do you end up not taking on these things or not getting ill or not getting the same ailments? Yeah. And, some people do take it on as their energy if you're not cleansing, because you need to be open so in shamanism we call it a hollow bone, but in the Reiki you're a clear open channel, so same things. So you're receiving the energy from source through you, and you're connecting down to the earth, and you're drawing up earth energy through you. So you're like balancing both of those energies are running through you, through your energy centers, which is clearing and cleansing. You're not using your own energy to do the healing. The healing is coming from source energy that flows through you, and earth energy that flows through you expands outwards through the heart. So at the end of the session, again, you're cleansing, you're grounding, and you can do that visualization,
Because I notice if you might allow me to make the observation, when I've had treatment with yourself, you're normally barefoot.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. Is that because you feel more comfortable, or is that because that's easier for you to ground and connect to source?
I feel very connected to the earth. I also get incredibly hot.
Okay.
The heat runs through me.
Again, I've felt the heat coming off of you.
So it's away from me.
I have.
And ground.
Yeah. Because you quite often say to me, "Do you want the blanket?" It's like, "No, I'm cooking here.
But some people drop temperature and they go the other way. They feel very cold. But yeah, for me, when the energy runs through me, it gets very hot. But in the shamanic, so I'm also diverting the energy. I'm sending it to a body of water. So we have the River Avon, don't we, just to the west of us?
We do, yeah.
Or it is to my room. And so I send it I'm sending it all down
Okay.
that way.
But it's going to be washed away. Yeah.
Yeah. Or we're clearing it in. Sometimes it's collected if I'm using the sticks.
Mm-hmm.
I love to use gorse because it kind of has the snake-like shape on it after the burning.
Yeah.
Or dragon-like, which represents transformation, and that's what you're going through. You're shifting your energy. So I'll use those sticks as a representation to make the energy more tangible. So we collect and wind that energy that you're letting go of into that stick, and then that person who's had the healing, they can go and take the stick and release it to nature, which helps them process and release.
Because again, I suppose I should, but you've done that with Mark before, haven't you? Am I right in thinking you did? And he disappeared on the way home for quite some time. I had no idea where he was, and I said, "Where are you? You haven't been with Nicola all this time, taken up all the time." He said, "No, I had to go and dispose of a stick."
I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but it's
no, not at all. I mean, the journey for me started. Again, my listeners will understand where the journey for me started. I had, as a teenager, quite often visited places. As soon as I learned to drive, I used to visit somewhere called Western Shore in Southampton, because I was one of the first to learn to drive. I used to drive my friends away. Of course, at 17, 18, you very rarely had any money. You couldn't really go anywhere, because some of you were underage, some of you weren't. And so we ended up kind of going through a McDonald's drive-through, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night. And then we'd end up at Western Shore, which was a shale beach in Southampton. And I had a great practice then with my friends that we used to name our problems. We used to throw our problems into the sea. And that's how I then decided to come to you after going to Mexico. And I was aware I was feeling very heavy after awful lot of bits and pieces that went on in my personal life and professionally. And I started in Mexico by throwing some things into the sea, but then realised actually they were a lot bigger than that. And I was still, although I'd sort of named the problem and cast it off into the water, that I still was dealing with either the grief of it or the negativity of it, or for some reason couldn't let that go. And I suppose, it makes a lot of sense to me that if you put a negative energy or something that you wish to dispose of into an object, there needs to be disposed of.
The energy you can't see into something tangible that you can. And also different things that you work with. So if you're working with stones, it's quite earth energy, so that can take longer to process. And it's the same with what you might do with the stick. I mean, we tend to put it in a fast body of water because it flows out to sea. So your problem's going to kind of flow with that. But you could also bury it. If I'm doing moon circles, then we work with that particular moon energy, and we might be releasing. There's always something to release before you can make way for something new to come in with the new moon. So you're releasing that, whatever that item is. Sometimes it's a leaf, sometimes we write on a leaf, and we let it go with the wind, with the air. Again, it would depend on the moon, if it's which astrological house is within that moon, whether it's an air, a fire or earth. So that could help you then choose whether you want to bury it with the earth or which then could take like a year it has timelines with it. Everything's so interrelated.
But I was just going to say, but again, I suppose also my mind skipped to then why you wouldn't burn that thing. But I suppose that's quite an aggressive way of doing things. I mean, you're talking about sort of letting things go in the wind and blow away, or wash away in water, or burying them in the ground and then actually sort of decaying and being returned to the earth. That they're all quite slow and gentle processes. Obviously, burning is violent, isn't it?
So if you are ready though to let go of something, and you've been working on it over some time, you will find that burning is just as good. That's the rapid transformation.
Because I'm finding myself there's things I keep thinking I've dealt with, and there's things that keep sort of surfacing and working back round with me that I'm told that they will keep surfacing. They'll get more manageable. They'll get packaged up into different sizes, and you'll file them away in different places. And I think when I had my first treatment with you, I was describing it to another person I see professionally, my osteopath. And he said, "Ben, you look lighter." And I said, "I feel so much lighter. I feel like I have had an awful lot of negativity and grief and sorrow and pain released." And that was very, very moving for me. Some bits I believe I've picked back up. Again, I feel like I have reshaped these items, and I'm going to pick something up now. I'll pick up this clipboard and say, right, I've been carrying this around for 30 years and it was this size. but now I've kind of lost that page and I've put that down, and now I've got just something else, and it's now a different shape, but I can carry it in a different way. So now I'm walking through my life and I don't feel that I'm so burdened by what I had let go. So I'm really glad that you've found ways that you can find ways of earthing or releasing that energy. Because one of the things that I thought about instantly when you had finished working on me the first time is I felt, please don't take me this wrong, but I felt really sorry for you, because I had such a relief of the negativity and pain and things that had left me. I felt them disappear. And my first then question was, oh my God, now what, oh my goodness, what have you done with it? Because I don't want to project that on you as someone who very graciously gave me a wonderful feeling and made me feel this way. I couldn't bear to think of you that I've now given you everything that I've been carrying around. And I didn't even know I was aware. I mean, I felt heavy and I felt negative and I felt stuck. But I didn't necessarily know what all that was. Or until it was gone, you didn't realise how much it was burdening you. I didn't want you to be carrying that around. So that was one of the first questions on my mind when I sort of sat up and composed myself and stopped crying. It's like, okay, now what are you going to do with it? Because I don't want you to feel all of that, because that would be completely overwhelming, especially if you didn't know what it was.
A lot of people say that, actually. A lot of different clients. I think that's quite normal.
Okay.
Especially if you're, compassionate, empathic, and, and some
have any sort of awareness around you.
You do feel that. And to be honest, for some people, especially when you start this work, if you're very empathic, you're automatically taking on sometimes other people's energy.
Mm-hmm.
You're mixed up in that. So you sort of learn over time how to. It's not you're closing it off from that. You just know that doesn't belong to me.
Yeah.
And so it's not mine to hold.
Yeah.
I'm just here to support that. You know, to create the space to hold it whilst you release it, and then obviously I'll find my way of releasing it, and that might be different for all of us. But we also have our guides.
Yeah.
I call in my guides to support me,
mm-hmm.
but I always tend to call in the client's guides as well. So I would call in your guides to support you, because I don't think necessarily my guides might not be the right guides for you, and vice versa. Yeah. So I just think, I call in both to support both of us. So, your guides are working with you through me, but they're doing the work, not me. So, so I don't take it on, no.
Good.
And again, I have had some clients sometimes say, I don't necessarily need to know what's gone on either. Sometimes I'll feel it, sometimes I pick it up. And some of them have, sort of asked that they don't want to share it sometimes because of that same thing you just said. They don't want to pass that on. It's almost like
almost if you vocalise it, it makes it even more real.
So they hold it in, but for me, it's like I find out anyway.
Yeah.
because it's either going to come through in the energy, or I'll dream it the night before.
Okay. Again, I found this quite interesting when I visited for healing with yourself, that you've said, I've laid out these crystals for you, and I've picked up this particular item and placed this under the treatment bench. And I'm really interested. We'll talk about that in a little bit if we can. But I've always found that to be very, very intuitive of you. And they've always been quite right. And it was funny. I think the last time you did treatment on me, you said, I've pictured you not surrounded by grass but surrounded by moss. Was that right? And actually, for me, that would be right. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of grass. I spend all of my time mowing grass. But moss for me would be a much more gentle, much more relaxing place. And I think that last treatment we had was quite some time ago now, several months ago. But during that one, I actually managed to, when you closing me down and asking me to connect and quieten myself down, at that point I felt more of a connection. You're talking about the line coming up from earth and from spirit and anchoring with that. At that point, I actually with that analogy of a woodland scene with running water and moss, that was a much more of a connecting moment for me than it was, for instance, being stood on grass. So I find that intuition with yourself incredibly interesting. It's it's I suppose that again is learning to tune into your gifts and listening to your inner voice and actually sort of tuning into it and knowing what to do with it.
the biggest thing is trusting it.
Yes.
It's overcoming that. It's, first of all, for me it was fear. Not everyone fears it, but for me it was a fear, and you overcome that, and then it's trusting it, that you're not making it up, that it's not your imagination, that it's you know, just be guided by what comes in. And for me, I either picture it because I'm quite visual, so that's the clairvoyant centres, or I hear information, so that's clairaudience. And to start with, I was feeling it, so that's clairsentience. But I choose not to feel now, because it is quite painful. If someone's got a bad knee, I can feel that. So I choose not to. I choose to tune into the other clairs, as it were.
The other two clairs rather than all three clairs at once.
It depends. Yeah, you can't always do it.
We touched a little bit earlier on the fact that I'm carrying rocks around in my pocket, and there's rocks around in our house. By rocks, I'm talking about crystals, and intuitively, when we visit, Mark and I obviously visit separately, that you have chosen particular crystals for treatment. Now, Mark has always got real crystal envy and comes back after seeing some of your collection and going, "Oh my goodness me, I must try and get hold of X, Y, and Z." Where can I ask quickly where you're managing to find some of these from? Because some of yours are big and some of them are incredibly pretty. Where are you sourcing this kind of thing from?
Oh gosh, I think I've just collected them over the years. I mean, I've often had crystals anyway. So different shops when I've been in Glastonbury, sometimes at Avebury, particularly the dragon heads. There's also a lovely lady who was also one of my mentors for Reiki. What she call herself? Hocus Pocus, I think she might call herself now. Over at Horton, she has an amazing collection of crystals. So a lot of them are
one for the notebook.
Yeah, she does do them online. I think, So she's great. She's got quite a lot of crystals there. But they're just kind of collected from everywhere, really.
All right. And just if someone was just starting out on some sort of holistic or spiritual journey, like say Mark and I have over the last sort of 12-15 months, could you maybe suggest 3 or maybe 4 crystals that someone could start with that might make them connect and ground them a little better, make them feel a little bit more at ease? What would be your, say, 3 or 4 go-to ones?
I would think amethyst is your first one.
That's big one over there. Pretty sort of light violet purple.
That's lovely. It's the all-round healer, so it kind of just does everything. So definitely amethyst. I like to use grounding stones, and I tend to go for the black ones. So I'd go tourmaline. That looks like a lump of coal.
There's one of those in the porch. You passed on your way in.
By the doorways. It's protection. But it's also grounding. So you'll always see I've always got tourmaline and obsidian. I tend to put at the bottom when we're
tend to favour obsidian myself as well.
I do as well. I feel the obsidian is quite a reflective mirror, and I feel like it brings up our kind of shadows. So when I'm doing a healing, if I've got the obsidian there, and especially if I connect you in and ground your root into that, then I'm going to pull up that information, that negative, whatever's in there that wants to come up and be released. It's going to be reflected back up. There's no hiding.
It's funny you should say reflecting, because for me, actually, I use obsidian when I know I'm going to go into negative situations. When I know I'm going to go into a situation where, because I obviously have this not ability, but I have this, I suppose it is ability. I have a tendency to carry other people's problems. I seem to absorb other people's negativity, other people's problems, other people's emotions. And I find I carry that particular one when I know that I'm going to be in a situation where I'm going to encounter someone that, for instance, everybody knows someone that you say, "Oh, how are you?" And then you just get this sort of barrage of how exactly this person is, which I suppose we all should normalise, but British people just say, "Oh, we're fine, thank you very much." But those people I tend to pick up on, and I tend to carry that energy with me. So I kind of use that one as a reflective way of bouncing back the bits that I don't want to take from a situation. So I normally favour that one and put that one into my pocket when I know I'm going to go into a situation where I'm going to find negative or particularly challenging. So
that makes perfect sense.
Does it? Okay.
That's why witches wore black, I think. It's the same thing, it's to reflect the energy and the negative energy.
I suppose it's a bit of an oversight of me. I should have brought my crystal tray out with me and put them in here as a visual aid. But I've got Mark and I have exactly the same collection each. We order them we get them in pairs, and I choose one and he chooses one from the pair. Now, Mark knows exactly what his stones are for. He knows all of their names. I don't. I choose them, and I literally look at my tray of stones every day, or jet crystals, whatever we want to call them, but I call them rocks. I look at them every single morning, and I will choose 2, sometimes 3, that speak to me in that day. I don't need to know what they're for, but they will catch my eye, whatever they might be, whether it's, I don't know, might be clear quartz, it might be obsidian, but I basically pick them on the basis of, okay, what looks like a magpie, what looks good to me today, and I'm learning to try and trust myself that actually those are the 2, maybe 3. So sometimes it is 4. Maybe I've got half a kilo of crystals in my pocket, but I'm finding that a good way of just actually intuitively just sort of looking at the tray and go, right, which ones are talking to me today, which ones do I feel I need, and I'm selecting them that way. So it's quite nice to hear it.
I think that's a perfect way to do it. If you're really interested in it, you're going to learn the crystals, you'll learn what they are, and there's lots of overlap.
The green one, the black one.
Yeah. And to be honest, that's how I do it now. I used to try and learn them, and but each one does. Some of them replicate and they do the same things, but slightly differently. So now I'm just like how you are. It's just, these are the crystals.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm drawn to it, I must need it.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's not for me, it's going to be for a client, and then I'll know later. So I work with it that way. And then I might look it up afterwards. Well, why have I chosen these particular stones?
Yeah.
And then I'll know because of, what's come up with that particular stone.
Yeah.
It makes sense to the healing.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I work with it. I check it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we had anthracite, and we had the grounding stones, sort of tourmaline and obsidian. And can we sort of highlight another 2 that might be a good place for people to start with?
Of course, the clear quartz. I think that's another really high energy.
Yeah.
And that's the amplifier. So any crystal that you have, and if you have that next to it, that amplifies the energy of that one.
We've put that above the, I'm pointing again, you can't see because you're listening, but I've put that above the doorway in the dining room, and in a high spot in an attempt to amplify energy. So clear quartz.
Yeah, and I mean, you can create a crystal grid in your home. You can have you've got all your crystals.
Oh no, we're going to disappear down a rabbit hole now.
You can connect them all to one another, so they really amplify the home with all the different intentions that you've got. So you can kind of create that grid and work with that as well.
That's given us.
I think you just said Amazonite. Actually, you just
did I?
One. Yeah, even though I said amethyst, but you said Amazonite. But
okay.
Yeah, that's another one. That's really nice.
Yeah.
That's a green stone.
Oh, I'd be very drawn to that. I'm drawn to anything greeny.
Healing,
yeah.
Very healing. Yeah. Stone.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so plenty to work on there as well. Now, we briefly touched on the basis. Another thing that I spoke to you about when I came to visit you for the first and second time is that we felt an energy within the house. Obviously, I explained earlier that our house is old in a lot of people's terms. A lot of my listeners will be listening from America, for instance, when this episode goes out, and for them to find out that we live in a house that's 327 years old, it completely blows their mind. And our roof is made of straw, and our walls are made of, well, we call them snot. It's cob. It's sort of bits of coal and mud and straw and stuff all mixed together. And we found ourselves with an energy within the house that when we were doing building work here on the house was getting quite, it wasn't aggressive, it wasn't angry, but it was certainly playing up. The TV would turn on at night, lights would turn themselves on and off. Things weren't in the house where we left them, and we were very aware that there was something here, and it got so normal here for quite some time that I would simply get up at 2:00 in the morning and unplug the TV, and the TV would still switch itself on. And people would say, "Oh, how are you still living in this house? Why have you not moved?" And we used to say to people, "Well, we don't feel that this is an aggressive energy. We don't feel this means us any harm. But you picked up on this energy when I came to visit you." And that was away from the house, and that kind of spirit spoke to you as well. And you said that it was called Willem or William. You weren't quite sure of the pronunciation. Now, I'm not going to ask you whether you can feel Willem here today, because we've had lots of conversations with Willem, and Mark and I have made it quite clear that the spirit of the house, or the spirit that is here, is more than welcome to share our space with us. But that would really kind of freak a lot of people out, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Freaked me out to start with, because you brought him with you into my room, so I was like, have you got energy?
I think he wanted to come and speak to you because I think he had been a bit misconstrued. Is that right?
Yes. This is where I struggle now, because when I channel at the time, I remember it there and then, but I don't remember afterwards. But you're going to remember.
Well, I'm going to remember, so I'll give you a prompt. I obviously brought Willem with me, and I think Willem wanted to make himself aware to you because he's quite mischievous. He's quite playful, and he had attached himself to me on occasion where I was very, very low. And very specifically, I can remember a couple of times when Mark was, for instance, away from business, and I could be in the house for quite some long periods of time on my own. Obviously, I work on my own, and I could go maybe 4 days, maybe 5 days without seeing another human being. I'd be on my own and then come home on my own. And I was feeling very, very low. And at several periods of time that Willem seemed to sort of a bit playful and a bit sort of gesture-ish. And this whole, I'm going to use a modern word, which we use a lot now. It's called banter. He likes to poke fun at a situation. And I found that very negative because obviously I was in a very negative, heavy space. And I think Willem came through with me when I visited you and actually wanted to kind of almost explain himself. As actually, I'm just a bit playful and I'm sorry if my energy was a little bit off.
Yeah, he was just curious. I think that's what he was. He was curious as to what was going on, who's living in his, they still term it as their house or their home, because that's where, if he lived here, it felt like he was an energy that has lived here.
Yeah.
And yeah, they did give the name, and I think you were wanting to know what the name was. So,
yes, well, yeah, because we have a sort of a list of people that we know to have lived here, but there are huge blocks of time where we don't know, because the house was originally a gamekeeper's cottage and a gatehouse for a local estate. So the house is very old, and many people moved in and out of it. Some people stayed for a very long time. We've got a picture of a house, a picture of the house. Well, we've got 2 pictures of the house, which some people find very, very strange indeed. We've got a picture of the house in the very, very late 17th century, and it's called A Lady Waiting for a Carriage. And she's actually stood, I'm going to point because again that's where she's out on the drive, because the drive comes through the original estate gates all the way to the manor house, which is up the road, and she is there in her full regalia, obviously some sort of house member of house staff, whether she was a maid or whether she I don't know, but was in her full work uniform, and she stood out there. And we've also got a picture of the house that we took ourselves, which really freaks people out, is actually on the TV. It goes round, when the TV switches itself off, it goes round on one of these little slideshows. And Mark took it some time ago, well, when we first moved in, and there appears to be a lady sat in our front window, which it used to be our lounge. That used to be the actual kitchen of the house, the main room of the house. It was then turned into a lounge. We've now turned it into a dining room. There's a big fireplace in there. And through one of the windows, you can very, very distinctively see a lady sat at the table, which she can't have been there because not physically, because we owned the house and both of us were outside taking pictures of the house at that sort of time. But again, we're aware of certain people that have sort of lived here, but Willem wasn't one of them. So it's really interesting that he came with me and made himself aware or made himself known to you during that session.
Yeah, he definitely had, I don't know, like a 1920s or that sort of era, maybe late 1800s. I don't know, just that early period.
Yeah.
Or
well, it's very likely, if in that period, probably one of the very last people to have lived here before the house fell into real disrepair. We're aware that the house was sold by the estate in 1939 and described by Fox and Sons in the original deed of sale as uninhabitable dwelling.
Okay.
The family that we then bought it from then lived here. They bought it in 1939 at auction, and 3 generations of the same family then lived here before we purchased it in 2018. So if that was about the sort of timeline that Willem was here, that actually he would probably have been one of the last estate people to have lived here before the house sort of fell and the estate fell into hard times and had to be carved up.
Oh wow. Yeah, he had a very old view of looking at things.
Yeah.
I think as well. So, that sort of stiff upper lip that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he was curious as well as to why you might be feeling emotional.
Yeah.
He was drawn to that because he was just curious, because it would be something that he would never have been allowed to express.
Yeah.
Being in that time
Mm-hmm.
period. So that there was that sort of element of it, I think, that was coming through.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about it is that before we knew who Willem was and the fact that they were with us in the house, that whenever we entered, for instance, the room that we're talking about is actually the guest bedroom, the pink room, and whenever we entered into that room, we could normally smell smoke, and we put it down to cigarette smoke. The one of the last owners of the house was the owner, the father of the gentleman we bought it from was a very, very heavy smoker. The gentleman we purchased it from, he was a heavy smoker. So when we got hold of the house, one, it was absolutely filthy, and secondly, the walls ran when you washed them with so much nicotine. And we just put it down to the fact that, you know, the nicotine was coming out of the walls and stuff. But in more investigation, it turns out that Willem may have actually been more of an outside worker. He may have been a gamekeeper or some sort of bushcrafter, and that smell of smoke is not necessarily nicotine smoke or tobacco. It actually is more like burning wood smoke. It's maybe a bonfire or cooking fire within the house. So that was, again, a really interesting thing to find out. As we found out more about.
Didn't I smell the smoke?
Yes, you did. Yeah, you did. Yeah. And you said actually it's not a nicotine. It's not a tobacco smoke. It's actually sort of burning brush or wood smoke. Yeah. So that was really interesting to find out.
It was a bonfire-y smell.
Yes.
Smoke.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Then. I can smell it now.
Can you?
Just need to describe it. Yeah.
So again, it was really interesting to find out about. And you mentioned in the conversation just before we started recording today that though obviously Willem may be here, the house has its own spirit, which we try and look after quite a lot. Obviously, we've put it through an awful lot. It's been knocked about a lot, but we've had to sit the house down on several occasions. This sounds really strange, but we've had to sit the house down and go, right, okay, we mean you all the best intentions, but if we don't do this, you're going to fall down. Because when we bought it, there was a hole in the roof, and she was literally sliding into ruin. And I hope the house is very pleased with what we've done with it. But and you also mentioned about there's spirit within the land as well.
Yes, so because you're saying that maybe Willem is a spirit of the house, but he feels more like a guardian, like he was here and he's invested his energy here because he was happy here. So he's like a guardian of the house, but the spirit of the house feels really happy. Actually, it's beautiful energy in here. So so connecting. I love that you're connecting with the spirit of the house, but we also have spirit of the land as well, the land that it's built on. So we have different guardians and spirits that you can connect with. So if you're connecting in with the ground outside, or you can connect that way to the spirit of the land. Yeah.
Nicola, I've got one final sort of question for you, if you wouldn't mind. Now, the world is a really, really busy and challenging place, and a lot of people would say that I went through a lot of the emotional problems I went through last year because I put myself on social media, and that really wasn't the case whatsoever. But the world is very, very busy. It's incredibly challenging. That it kind of seems to throw things at us at a rate of knots that most people, well, all of us, are not built or actually prepared for. Can you suggest maybe 2 or 3 ways that you could become a little bit more mindful, maybe give yourself a little bit more space in your everyday life? Just maybe a couple of things that you could say, actually, this is something you could do just to take yourself out and make yourself feel a little bit more connected, a little bit more grounded, a little bit more ready for the challenges that we're all exposed to deal with.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And I think that's kind of my ethos, is about simply being. I think we've forgotten how to do that. To just simply be.
Again, I don't want to talk all over you, but one of the most difficult things I found is actually standing still. I have found myself for the last 12 months stood stiller than ever, feeling that my life is sort of hurtling past me because I'm no longer racing after it. I've decided to stop and allow things to slow down and allow things to come to me because I've done the work. Things are, I believe, destined to come my way. I have put the groundwork in. So standing still and just being, I think, is the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I know that sounds really, really strange to say, but I have found it the most challenging for someone who is normally hyper-vigilant and hyperactive. Sitting still and just allowing things to come, experiencing a space, feeling the sun on your skin, feeling the earth under your feet, feeling water is one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's really, really bizarre to say. So just being, yeah.
Yes, to simply be is hard, and I think that is it. It's part of that is mindfulness, isn't it? It's being mindful, and I think that is where being with nature can help. So like you just said, feeling the sun, watching water, just the river ripple through, sitting watching. It's noticing the little things that we've just forgotten, the connectedness of everything that's around us.
Yeah.
You know, watching a bee on a flower, or I've loved some of your recent things you've shown on Instagram. I think you've had. Do you have like a frog when you were on holiday?
Oh my goodness, that was just absolutely. And again,
magical,
again, I don't know if you managed to read the little bit underneath that, but I'm literally frogs have been a part of my life for a long, long time. And I'm being serious about this. As a child, I collected frogs, not live frogs. I collected frogs. I was obsessed with frogs. I had shelves in my bedroom as a child, hundreds of frogs. Used to get them for my birthday. They were on lily pads. They were under little plastic domes. They might have been Lego figures. They might have been made out of salt dough. I had ceramics, money boxes. I collected frogs. And all the way through my life, they've been frogs. To the point where I was literally probably all of last year, and I've shared a lot of this, I've been tripping over frogs in the garden, quite literally tripping over frogs. And having to be really mindful about where I put my feet, because everywhere I go, there are frogs. And then, as I say, sat on holiday in Thailand, opened the parasol, and a tree frog fell on me and spent, I don't know, it must have been 15 minutes sat on my shoulder. So.
Wow. I'd say the frog is probably one of your spirit allies.
Yes, yeah. Well, I had to have a little bit of a gobbledygoogle and see what the frog meant, but it was all about transformation, and again, it was very, very, very. And again, I feel I'm very much in that wheelhouse of progress in myself right now. There's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of movement going on. There's a lot of leaving stuff behind and moving forward and waiting for new things to come. So. Okay, yeah. So connecting with nature was a second one, and maybe one more that we could do to make ourselves a little bit more prepared for the modern world.
Yeah, I mean, to launch you into meditation's wonderful.
Yeah.
But like you just said, it's really hard to meditate.
Yeah.
Because you can't stop. We've forgotten how to stop. It's like you could be watching the telly, but you probably also got your phone and you're scrolling. We're always doing 2 or 3 things at once.
Yeah.
So to just stop and to meditate, you're just going to have hundreds of things going around in your head. So although it's really, really good for you, I would say if you did do a meditation, then do a mantra one. And that's where I started with transcendental meditation, because so I'd be saying a mantra over and over again in my head.
Yeah.
That way you're noticing the information that comes up, but you just let it go because you come back to the mantra.
Yeah.
So that's a helpful way of meditating rather than just trying to just stop, and because too much information comes in your head and it's incredibly hard. But yeah, meditation's really good benefits as well for lowering blood pressure and just calming the parasympathetic nervous system.
I think for me, when I came away from my first couple of sessions and I was trying to explain them to friends and family about the experience that I'd had with you, the first thing I said, just to be able to give myself the permission to have 45 minutes, an hour of quiet and focus on my breathing, I think was one of the biggest things for myself. And I'm not saying that, obviously I wouldn't have come back and had several sessions if I hadn't felt a huge amount of benefit and a huge amount of relief from our sessions. But just to be put into a state and being given the permission in today's world when everything seems to move so quickly to go, right, okay, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it might be, you're going to lay down with your eyes closed and you're going to focus on your breathing and just stop, I think was one of the largest fundamental points for me. I think one of the largest things I took away from all of my sessions is like, and I know I could do that myself. I could go now and I could put myself in a darkened room and I could try and breathe, but that your phone would go, the door would go, or something would happen. But actually for that 45 minutes and just to focus on my breathing and actually just slow myself has been one of the nicest things for me that I've taken away. And I know Mark has taken that away as well. Mark now meditates on a regular basis. Sometimes he needs to stop sleeping with his crystals, because I think very much like you, he has incredibly vivid and very realistic dreams. which he doesn't have the ability to process sometimes.
You probably don't want like labradorite by the side of your bed, because that's like the dream.
Well, it's quite often that he'll go to bed with certain crystals because he wants to give himself an experience. So sometimes he'll particularly choose himself like, oh, I really want something sort of really, really vivid or sort of particularly dynamic, and he'll choose a crystal particularly for that, and then he'll wake up really tired the next day. So what have you done that for?
Yeah, it's been busy.
Nicola, I've really, really enjoyed our conversation. We've rambled on for quite some time about many different topics. If there's anybody out there, can we make a suggestion maybe quickly about if anybody has some sort of interest in learning to be some sort of healer of some description, whether it's Reiki, whether it's shamanic, or whether it's just being more mindful, how would someone start that process?
So I mean, if they're near me, then I do that training.
Yeah, okay. And where can everybody find you?
So I'm Soulful Wisdom Academy.
Yeah.
.com, I suppose. I'm here, near you in the New Forest.
Yep.
But I also do it online, so the teaching is online as well.
And again, I'm going to quickly interject with that, because I found that really, really bizarre. I remember when Mark first reached out to you and said, I'd like to book a session for my husband, and you mentioned that you were incredibly busy, but actually you could do this online. And I can remember saying to him, well, that's just really bizarre. How can that happen? How can that happen? But then through my journey online, having made contact with many more people, and it was through opening up about my struggles last year that a lot of these people came forward. A lot of the people that I know will listen to today's episode, and I'm not going to name them because I know about 4 or 5 that will actually listen to this particular episode. They all came forward and said, oh, actually, Ben, we feel so connected to you. We feel so connected to your spirit, and we pick up on an energy from you and the media that you create. And it wasn't until I had those conversations with those people said, actually, no. And it's really bizarre that actually in the 100,000 people that I've collected together online that follow me every week for doing these silly things that I do online, that so many of them are actually connected to me as a person and my energy and my spirit. And that's beaming down through the phone, along the internet and off on Wi-Fi. And that's really, really bizarre. It just goes to show how strong and how important that is. Yeah,
I think some of my remote sessions, I think, are more powerful because you haven't got them there in the room. Mm-hmm. You've got to connect in even deeper. So you are going into the dream realms. So it's much stronger. Because some of my clients are in America as well. So, and you'll be sending it. Well, they're not even. You're not on the phone. I mean, you can be on the phone. You can be on like a Zoom call, but you tend to do it. You just give them a time and a place to relax, and then you're doing your thing, your healing session, and then you report back to them. But I've had things where someone's felt the sensation of wind blowing across them, and that's just when I've been using the feather to shift energy down through them, and they're like, oh, I felt this wind come across me, and or they can hear a sound. If I suddenly were to use the gong and use some sort of sound healing, they can hear or sense that as well. So it's quite powerful for both of you. You have to try it.
It's amazing. Nicola, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for coming along.
Thank you so much for asking me.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. I learned a huge amount about Nicola and her gifts during our conversation, and I will continue to visit Nicola just as regularly as I feel I need to. I hope by sharing this conversation we have inspired you to take a little bit of care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and allow yourself just a little bit of breathing space. And if there's something that you need help with, or if you're struggling to process something, that you maybe reach out to a local Reiki practitioner like Nicola, who can be found using the username Soulful Wisdom Academy on Instagram. So if you do need any help with anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm also astonished that the more I share about this particular journey, the more people come out of the woodwork. Over the last decade or so of using social media, I've received quite literally thousands and thousands of comments from people saying that they like my energy, they like my aura or the way that I conduct myself, and I've never really paid much thought to it. I didn't really realise until I started sharing a little bit more about my mental health struggles online and the fact that I'm quite spiritual that many people started to come forward. And I've actually quite naturally surrounded myself with a very, very mindful and wonderful group of people quite naturally that have over a period of years been drawn to the way I conduct myself, the way I speak, and the energy that I emit. I never ever thought in all of my years that this would be being able to be transmitted down through my phone into somebody else's phone and be picked up at the other end. So it just goes to show that these things are much bigger than we think they are. And I've really enjoyed getting to know some really wonderful people all around the world who have felt the energy that I've emitted through the media that I create. Next week, we're back onto the gardening topic, and I have the pleasure in bringing you a conversation with Charles Carr from the Hillier Garden Centre Group. So I hope you'll join me again next week. The Gardener Ben podcast is brought to you in association with Peterbilt's Roses, winner of 30 Chelsea Gold medals and creating timeless roses since 1968. Go online and shop at www.peterbiltsroses.com and make sure that you're following along on Instagram and TikTok. Until next week, happy gardening.